Okay. Hello, everybody. Happy to have such a nice community here with us in the room. We are starting the paper session, Realigning Fashion Education, Communities, Craft and Care. And I will introduce you shortly to Antonella Giannone. She is the facilitator of this paper session, and she will then continue. Antonella, she is professor at University, at Weißensee Kunsthochschule. And she did her doctorate at the Technical University of Berlin in the Department of Semiotics, focusing on the topics of clothing as a sign. Antonella is the author of numerous publications in the field of fashion theory, cultural studies and semiotics of clothing and bodies in different social contexts. So I'm very happy that you're here. Thank you for your time, and I give the word to you.
Thank you very much, Valeska. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Yes. So welcome to our paper exchange, Realigning Fashion Education, Communities, Craft and Care. And I welcome everybody here in Berlin, and also the collaborators, the panelists who are online and who will reach us in each presentation. We have a 5-minute collaborative paper session. And so we will spend 2 hours together, starting from now. And we will have 4 presentations or collaborative papers. And for each of them, we have 15 minutes. And we thought that it would be better to cluster all questions after all the presentations so that we can have a collaborative exchange too, and a collaborative questioning and so on. And a discussion, I hope. So after that, we are going to have a lunch, which is here downstairs. And so the order that you probably saw on the door, on the poster on the door, is not the right one. We are starting with the panel with the paper Extra Pedagogy, Connecting to Communities via Independent Study Courses and Research Mentorship. And then the second one will be Fashioning Our Future through Rewilding Education, an Indigenous Perspective. And then the third one will be I think just online presentation, Life After Life with Rishabh Manoka. And the last one, the fourth, is called Decolonial Design Education in Culturally Diverse Ecosystem. So this will be the order, and so I think I will start with the first paper. Maybe it was thought we were thought to be all here, no? Sitting here together to have another kind of perspective. So. So, Extra Pedagogy, Connecting to Communities via independent study courses and research mentorship. Marie-Geneviève Cyr is here, and this is a collaborative paper, so she will tell us more about the other contributors to this exchange. I just tell something to Marie-Geneviève Cyr. She is the director of the Bachelor of Fine Art Fashion Design program and at Parsons, and an associate professor of fashion design at Parsons School of Design, New York. She has a master in visual culture from New York University and a BA in design and applied arts from the Edinburgh College of Art. And her research examines the politics of abstract desire, hyperreality, hyperconsumption, and the internet. So I think you will tell us more about the other one, the other contributors, and this collaborative, I just tell you a few words on the session. This collaborative presentation focus on teaching methods that can foster interdisciplinary collaborative project by encouraging students to not only collaborate with their peers but also externally in order to build important professional and meaningful relationship. So the floor is yours, please.
Do I have to? Oh, wait. Ah, all right. Woo. All right. Do I have to use this, you think? Yeah?
Yeah, for the people online coming.
Oh, okay, perfect. That's fine. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here today in person. I'm so glad we're all connecting in person as well, and obviously welcome to everyone joining online as well today. I am Mary Genevieve Sear, yes, the director of the BFA Fashion Design Program and associate professor at Parsons in New York City, where I've been teaching for 13 years. So I'm starting my 14th year. So teaching can foster meaningful interdisciplinary collaborative projects by encouraging our students to not only collaborate, obviously, with their peers. I think it's important as well to create meaningful extra pedagogy or other as well projects outside the classrooms as well. So I will be talking about new forms of educations today. I am presenting 3 case studies from students at Parsons that I collaborate with. It's students from each year level, so we have one student from year 2, year 3, and year 4 of the BFA Fashion Design program as well that I will be presenting. These are the contributors. 2 of them actually did graduate from Parsons in 2023, like in May, and one of them is a current student. So Constanza in the middle, she was born and raised in Buenos Aires, Argentina, then moved to New York to study fashion design, and she obviously graduated in May. Her work is an invitation for people to celebrate themselves and also honoring generational craftsmanship. So we will talk about her work. Yetande Sap, the last one here, is a Washington, D.C. born and raised multidisciplinary artist based in Brooklyn. She attends Parsons School of Design right now. She is also a contributor to the Smithsonian Permanent Collection of art for her creative activism work during the 2020 protest in DC. She was also featured in Utopia Project exhibit in November 22. I'm going to talk about her current research project where she received financial as well funding from Parsons as well. The project is really focusing on preserving family narratives, documents, and photographs as well, very centered around the history of Black music and women in her family. The third one, which is the first one here, Gigi, so Giannina Noah Gomez, she graduated in May. She is a designer, performer, filmmaker, and poet. Her work is really focusing on textile, fashion, and film, exploring intersectionality between performance and socially focused narratives. By embracing the absurd, she's kind of a funny character, she strives to create garments that are excessive and explosive and strange, really exploring the historical moment of our planet in peril as well, so really focusing on sustainability. The first case study is called Artisani. That was originally by 3 students at Parsons. So in the fall 2020, I had the pleasure to meet and teach Elle, Constanza, and Jade for the Design Studio 1 course, which is the first course that they come in the BFA Fashion Design program. We were on Zoom, obviously, and it was really interesting to connect students with their geographical systems and living situation. So what I did as a professor, I initiated an exercise called cultural mapping, inviting students to identify their own local systems and resources. So they were looking at, farming, clothing production, artisans, circular system, trades, etc. And this exercise in the classroom led to a much bigger research proposal that they received funding from the university to really concretize as well the project. So while being an introduction, this project, the students really looked at methods to address specific design challenge, develop deep research methodologies, and produce speculative projects as well. Emphasis on designing with a deep consideration for human beings in all aspects of the fashion system. In addition to learning about materials and skills and techniques and concepts, students developed a design collective and engaged in critical dialogue with their communities. Constanza, the student from Buenos Aires, she had contact with artisans from native community in Argentina, where she was actually located in the times of COVID. So she was able to conduct a lot of in-person interviews and site visits. In the fall 2020, Elle, one of the other students, was also part of an elective course that we have at Parsons called Global Artisans. This course also, with my course in Design Studio, really put this big project proposal together and really contrasticized. So they were looking at the supply chain alternatives and really critically thinking about fair trade and the power structures as well that existed in Argentina. So by combining their skills, their knowledge, the project Artisani explored cultural exchanges in collaboration with the weaver artisan community in Jujuy in Argentina. So Constanza was able to do a lot of the groundwork and continue work on the project all over the summer. The research project investigated fashion design as a part of a system, that interrelated parts that include, but not limited, looking at raw materials, sourcing, labor, production practices and methods, design, garment production, and business side as well of fashion. Artisani brought social awareness and proposed new alternatives, really community-led practice, collaborative design values, and also celebrated Latin American crafts and voices. The goal of this project was to create a brand that focused on the idea of cultural exchange to collaborative projects as well and processes. They proposed a speculative, speculative systems and strategies, collection, so looking at products and materiality as well. Guided by purpose, this important research project proposed new roles for fashion designers, that is, social, professional, and artistic. The merit of this project is to promote preservation of indigenous crafts and materials, ethical practices, and really training the younger generation to work with communities. As a faculty mentor on this project, my role was really to give feedback and work a lot on the research plan, advise on logistics, support the organization, and implement research methodologies to support the system of creating products that make really positive impact on our world. The second case study, it's independent study. That was a really special research project from the student Gigi, so Giannina Gomez. In response to misconceptions about foraging secondhand material, the fashion designer of today really needs to be innovative, obviously, in sourcing as well and using materials. So, Gigi led a symposium that was presented, an international discussion, with designers and artists who only use upcycling, using discarded or damaged fabric as their primary source of creating garments. The symposium titled Foraging Fashion was really about sourcing. It was an international exchange of practices and methodologies focusing on artists and designers from Latin American geography. I'll show you the event in a second. The event included an open conversation and dialogue between students, educators, artists, designers, and general audiences, highlighting some alternative paths as well for fashion. The talk was moderated by Giannina, the students at Parsons. It included speakers I will show you in a second. These are screenshots as well from a lot of her research and conversations with designers mainly in South America. This is like part of her sourcing. She did a lot of field trips. These photos are all in Dominican Republic, where she spent months as well, there as well, doing research. This is also part of her research. And then this is what I want to show you quick. So the speakers included Stephanie Bezarra Rodriguez and Edward Alejandro Gorido, co-founders of Tiempo de Zafra, based in Dominican Republic, an atelier that works exclusively, really, with pre-customer excess textile, creating the production of garments and working as well with leftovers from local tailors and factories as well. Daniela, as well, the co-founder of the Head Show and the Remade Project, based in Puerto Rico, Mexico, New York, and Buenos Aires, is a community of artists as well that use recycling fabric and repurposed textile as well, and object. We have Martinez and Mariano Brescia, co-founder of Decena as well in Chile. Their work really take multiple forms of production as well, developing workshops as well in Skillshare in addition to garments. So aside from the symposium, the student had to also create a book of practical ideas, so thinking about resources, created event organization, and submit big conclusion reports as well to share with other students in the BFA fashion design program. So you see, like, these are just like screenshot of some of her magazine that she did, and she did distribute as well amongst the BFA students. The last one I want to talk about is Yetunde. In the fall of 2021, I had the pleasure to meet Yetunde Sapp, a student now at Parsons. I was really impressed right away with entrepreneurship, creativity, and how she built community as well within the student group as well at Parsons. During the pandemic, her and a couple other students created a series of online art experiences through her art collective called Slack House, which means, I put the acronym here as well, it's a living artist collective as well, obviously based in New York, and it's really addressing racial discrepancy as well in the artwork as well. So it's a group of mainly black female as well, black female students. And then her research projects, so Setambe is now a senior, she's gonna be graduating next year. This like specific research project, she received a lot of funding at Parsons that was last fall semester. This research project follows the journey of an ancestor, Debbie Moore and Rosemary McCoy, two black women who traveled to New York City to pursue musical careers in the early 50s and 60s. In 2017, her father's grandmother, Debbie Moore, passed away at the age of 92. She then discovered that it was not her real name, but a stage name that was given by Louis Armstrong while she was performing in New York City. So the student really discovered that one female in her family was this songwriter, and she wrote for Elvis Presley under another name. So that became the start of an incredible conversation between me and the student to really figure out how do I put a project proposal to really go deeper as well. So while she obviously looked at the research was really interesting because like how do you do research on somebody that was under another name but really present on the jazz scene as well in New York City. While she was looking at their journey as well, it mainly was interview, a lot of word of mouth, but she had to travel and speak to people. So she, through interviews, photographs, she found documents as well that capture really the life of this black woman in the fashion industry back then. Research consisted of written documents, looking at a lot of diaries that she found, correspondence, legal documents, newspaper, and also artifacts, you know, private collection, photographs, vinyls, etc. In March 2022, Yetunde traveled to Los Angeles and Memphis, Tennessee as well to conduct a lot of oral history interviews and collected objects that belonged to the woman. She also traveled to Teaneck, New Jersey. This is where Rose's last home was, to really look at clothing, old photograph, tapes, and other notes as well. After conducting extensive research, Yetunde also discovered a local artist organization that used to put up play about her great-grandma. The third location was Harlem, where her grandmother was allowed to perform at the time as a black woman. She researched records of her performance, flyers, photographs to add to the collection as well. As a mentor, I discussed with Yetunde how to capture this and document oral history. A lot of different interview techniques, coordination of travels, working with release form, any kind of organization for her project as well. And we talk a lot about cataloging as well, all of this work. So she's now working with an organization as well to really preserve this story. Their histories are interwoven with the likes of Elvis and Aretha Franklin and Louis Armstrong and many other iconic names in the music industry. What is very interesting as well is this student is a fashion student. She's a BAFA student, so she's studying journalism and fashion at this moment here at not here at Parson, but in New York City at Parson. So now the conversation is, how do you translate this beautiful story as well in the fashion context as well, looking at artifact and really how it's going to impact her own world as a young woman in her family as well. In conclusion, we're now looking at new forms of learning, I believe, as well. So it's really important as educator as well that we really look outside a typical classroom and that can lead students to really meaningful and creative paths as well for their own good as well in the fashion ecosystem. We talk a lot about co-creation, but what about co-education? So how do we work with students as faculty, mentor as well? We're all learning with each other. So for me, I think moving towards co-education as a cooperative form of teaching will be very important, like this relationship, to review the relationship between students, faculty, and our fashion ecosystem, so it can become a much more open community. And lastly, the last thing as well, this is another book. So this is a book that I co-edited with Dirk Reiners as well, who used to be the former head of the Fashion Institute in Amsterdam. So this is coming out. It's actually in print now. It's printing now in the Netherlands, and it's going to come out really late fall semester as well. So check on that as well. It's really about inclusive articulation and practices in design, communication, and development. And there are a lot of names here that you may recognize, like Otto as well. I know he's here today, so Otto is in it. Jennifer Whitty, Grace June. There are a lot of people as well that are here at the conference today that are part of this book. And that's it. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, you want. Maybe you can decide, because it is not really good for look at, you can decide. So, thank you very much, Geneviève Cyr. And now we have the second collaborative exchange, collaborative paper, and it is called Fashioning Our Future Through Rewilding Education, an Indigenous Perspective. And this paper, authors of these papers are Tukaya Ingataki and Karishma Singh Kesley. And Karishma is here with us, and Tukaya is online. Can you hear me? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Welcome. I just say a few words about you. Tukaya is a Maori descent native to New Zealand. He was born to the teaching of his elders and is passionate about his history and Wakapapa, which means genealogy. He has worked in various areas of New Zealand education system for over 20 years, and he's a keeper of the Maori tikanga. And Karishma Singh Kesley is an educator, scholar, designer. She has lived and worked among craft and artisanal wares, so her research focusing on implementing indigenous wisdoms framework into education to foster ethically focused future leaders. Her current work is in style activism and promotes a paradigm that shifts towards a defashioning through conscious connection to self. Karishma also teaches style activism, entrepreneurship, and sustainable design innovation to secondary and tertiary students in Aotearoa. Yes, thank you very much, Karishma, and I think you can start with your presentation, and thank you very much to Kaya. Is he starting? Okay, you are starting. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I ngā mana, i ngā reo, i ngā reo tirama o te ao whānui, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Taupiri te maunga, Taupiri is my sacred mountain. Ko Waikato te awa, Waikato is my sacred river. Ko te mānukanukatanga o Hoturoa, Toku Moana, the Mānukanuka is my sacred ocean. Ko Tainui Toku Waka, Tainui is my sacred canoe. Ko Tukaya Ngāta ki Toku Ingoa, e Māori ahau no Aotearoa, New Zealand. My name is Tukahia and I'm Māori from Aotearoa, New Zealand. The reason I wanted to start with my maunga is because this is our pūtake, our origin. This is our where we affiliate to, this is our foundation. Our awa, river, is our movement. This is our connection to other places and the beginning of our manaakitanga or our caring for others and the understanding of others. There's a saying from my people, he piko he taniwha, he piko he taniwha, taniwha rau. On every bend of the river there is a village, and it's our manaaki, our care for each village and people. Moana, our ocean, is our connection that binds us all together to the world. And waka is our vehicle which we use to traverse to other places and share our knowledge, our mātauranga Māori, or to show our manaakitanga, our caring, our rangatiratanga, our leadership, our kaitiakitanga, our guardianship. And I hope to share some more with you today in this presentation. Nā reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora, Krishma.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I am a cross-cultured African Indian living in Aotearoa. My sense of belonging is deeply rooted in my rich tapestry of heritage and legacy. From the ancient rhythms of the terracotta sands in Africa to the history of artisanal makers, warrior kings, and navigating merchants and seafarers among my Indian ancestors, to the sea-faring adventurers drawn by the spirit of the warm southern oceans, where my current forefathers toiled as indentured laborers. We wove a legacy of community, connection to land, connection to oceans in the profound concept of Ubuntu. I am proudly part of the Singh iwi, or the Singh clan of KwaZulu-Natal, who cultivated sugarcane along the KwaZulu-Natal coastlines, engaging in numerous community-driven initiatives and grassroots movements that eventually led to the formation of the African National Indian Congress later in the day. My legacy spans continents, intertwining the earth, the ocean, and the mountains, from Africa's Table Mountain to India's Himalayas, and currently to New Zealand, Aotearoa's Mount Hikarangi, the land that hits the first light every day. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Today, welcome to a very, very, very special moment in the history, and for which I am incredibly thankful and grateful for. It's actually part of New Zealand's first few language acknowledgement weeks, where for the first time in the long history of Aotearoa and the Māori of Aotearoa, we are now acknowledging the wisdom of these Indigenous people. And it's from this perspective that I am going to be talking to you today. We're going to talk about Indigenous peoples and Indigenous thinking and Indigenous knowledge. So let's start with, firstly, who are the Indigenous peoples of the world? After all, we all have an indigeneity, don't we? We all have a culture. We all have a heritage that connects ultimately back to the earth. That is true. That is absolutely true. But for today, we're going to speak about Indigenous communities as those who live in community, retaining memories of life lived on a sustainable way on the land, as part of the land, and maintaining and retaining Indigenous knowledge in the application of its memories from that base, according to Tyson Yankaporta. Thank you, Tyson, for that lovely definition. Indigenous thinking and knowledge embodies a profound connection, a connection to the self's core elements, intertwining the gut, the head, and the heart, connecting being, reflecting, and doing. It is a representation of a way of existence, action, and experience that's rooted deeply in intergenerational transmission, guided by what is called the whakapapa mindset, or the legacy mindset, that values respect, reciprocity, community, collectivism, purpose, and of course, systems a word that is now on trend, but that is integral to indigeneity of life. Lastly, central to the indigenous worldview is living in harmony, living in what is called the intuitive flow. Now, that is quite the opposite of the current colonial paradigm where you've got to plan and you've got to think and you've got to check out whether this actually aligns to how much you can make and how much you can extract. This is the opposite. It flows with the rhythm. And if you are in connection with that rhythm, so then you will prosper with the land, in the land, and of the land. That brings me to just a little provocation, and we've had many of those today. Sadly, our current reality and our current space. But I'd like you to read that for a minute. Breathe it in. And breathe it out. And as you breathe out, we're going to read and we're going to breathe our hope. We're going to breathe and we're going to be all that we actually are, all that we truly are from something that we have long actually forgotten. It's time for us to ponder the legacies that we wish to leave on this earth, considering our diverse worldviews, our diverse ancestral wisdoms, and not just simply one dominant way. It's time for us to decide whether we want to give back to the earth, much like she has generously given to us, or do we actually want to even be considered as ancestors that are worthy of being considered as ancestors for the future generations to come? It's time, everybody, for us to not simply be the culture that is, dressing in a certain way or eating in a certain way or, traveling and appreciating. It's time for us to dig deep. It's time for us to actually venture into the space that moves these hands of our current ways of being. And it's from that perspective today that we are going to talk to you about Mātauranga Māori. Mātauranga Māori is actually a wisdom of the Māori people, one specific indigenous worldview. I'm going to leave that for TK a little bit later on, but I want to just give you the context of the big framework that you see on the side and how this relates into the space of education. 6 years ago, after working with university students on several decoloniality projects and looking at several ways to be culturally responsive, we realized that whilst we can be culturally responsive and whilst we can actually engage and get cultural outputs in the field of business enterprise, if we really wanted to have students who were innately, intrinsically post-growth driven, then what we needed was not simply to give them a project, but what we needed was to develop a way of learning, a way of assessing, a way of being that allowed them to intrinsically bring their whole self to the party. And this led to one of the first projects of its kind, where with 5 schools and over 2,000 students in 56 different cultures studying business enterprise, we have started to work within this framework of Mātauranga Māori, a framework that connects and interconnects the gut, the head, the heart, and the hands from every step of the way to be, to connect, to reflect, to direct, and ultimately to become. And now I'm going to pass on to TK, who's going to actually delve deeply into those various concepts that found the values of our framework. Matua TK, over to you.
Kia ora tātou. I'm here to talk about the whakapapa toolkit. Kia ora koe, Krishna. This is our whakapapa mindset tool, and it's based on some of our key values in Te Ao Māori, or the native people of Aotearoa, New Zealand. Whakapapa is used to recite genealogy. Papa is the ground or the foundation, and whakapapa is a metaphor to lay ground on top of ground, essentially showing your connection to the land, the whenua, or and also to the past, present, and future. So we use this, the whakapapa toolkit, as the foundation of our key values. Manaakitanga translates to strength to support. It's a word for caring, empathy, compassion, understanding of each other. And as you can see by the shape of the heart inside the slide there, it's a joint of the love. Another key value is kaitiakitanga. Kaitiakitanga translates to guardianship, nurture, connect to whenua, ensures the environment is both physically and spiritually safe for our future generations. So also another key value. Rangatiratanga. Tino rangatiratanga. Ranga in the Māori concept is the action of weaving. Tira is the object that is weaved. So rangatiratanga translates to a leader, and in Te Ao Māori, the leader or a chief is not necessarily the strongest or the bravest, but is considered a person who can weave people together to create the greater outcome. So that's also a really important value of ours. Kotahitanga, tahi is one. Kotahitanga is the act of being one. Take is represented as an origin or the beginning. So as you can see with the shape that we have there, the koru, it has an inside with a beginning and expands out. So quite a common shape in New Zealand, Aotearoa. But yeah, that's where it starts from the middle and it expands out. Whakapapa, which I already talked about. And the last one, but not least, and possibly one of the most important is whanaungatanga, which breaks down to whānau. So whānau in Te Ao Māori is family, and whanaungatanga is the act of being family. So whether you're blood related or not, it's that act of being family. So these are some of the core values that make up our whakapapa mindset toolkit, and from an Indigenous Māori framework from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And thank you for listening. Kia ora. Tēnā koe, Krishna.
And now, for the diagram that brings all of that learning together into the whakapapa mindset. Now, whakapapa, as you've heard, is about deep thinking. It's about creating what is called long time. And why do we want to create long time? Because for us to create long time, it means we're going to create deep culture. And why do we need to create deep culture? Because if we want to think about the generations to come and the legacy we leave, and if we want to instill in students this kind of thinking where I am because we are for yesterday, for now, and for the future. In Te Reo Māori, they say, I'm going to walk into the future backwards, so that I remember that past and I take it with me. So in this concept, in this education framework, this is actually a summary of the running of the Business Enterprise Design Program, where students are the center. The students and us, the teacher, and all the stakeholders in that space are the kaitiaki. Kaitiaki being the core, the guardian, the self. Why the self? Because we are intrinsically the earth. We are whenua. Whenua in Te Reo Māori, and actually in many Indigenous wisdoms, the word for land, the word for earth, and the word for self are often the same one. In the case of Te Reo Māori, it's whenua. Whenua for placenta, whenua for earth, whenua for us. So, if you think about it, if you have an environment that is rooted in the concept of the purple, the manaakitanga. Now, in Manaaki, the space, this is the physical environment, this is the physical building of the classroom. From this position of belonging, of true empathy, of creating true, deep, authentic relationships, allowing students, no matter their disposition, no matter their view, their intelligence level, their inadequacies, and no matter their culture, skin, and color. If they can come into a space and come into a classroom and feel the moriora, feel the essence of belonging, then from a space of belonging, true, authentic trust is it's just naturally going to be formed. And so from that space, that's the role of the educator, that's the role of the governance, to build this space of Manaki. And from that space of Manaki starts to flow as the koro unswirls itself to the first step of our teaching process, which is the pepeha. The pepeha and our connection to the whakapapa. Whakapapa being the past. Pepeha, as you've noticed that TK and I both did it at the beginning, it's when we share our stories, it's when we actually share our sense of connection. It's when we actually are vulnerable to release that armor and to talk about the fact that I eat with my fingers. Why on earth do we want to invent a new type of fork? It's when you can come to the table and be your vulnerable self without feeling othered. So that space of learning is magic, because oftentimes in that learning is unlearning. From the educator's perspective, it's like, whew, we really don't know how to deal with that. Because the stories that come up, if you've done your job right in that purple space, when you come to the Pepe House space, which is the Whanaungatanga space, you're going to get really beautiful magic, really beautiful connections between students. Sometimes you won't get connections. Sometimes you will get somebody feeling left out. That's all right, because in Manaki, we accept that space. We accept everyone for where they are and how they are. And that is important. And now, it's time for us to co-create our actual year of work, which becomes 3 years of work, ultimately. It's time for the Potahitanga, the time of in African we say the time of the Ubuntu, the time of the actual unity. Now this, for me, is the hardest time and the most fantastic time of watching students grow. It's kind of akin to Maria's co-creation of the projects, and I think everything we're going to learn, because here, the projects are determined based on the green concept on the top, which is the putaki, the reason for being, the vision, the why. But remember, that why is part of that koro, which is part of the self, which is part of the whenua, part of the interconnection to the earth. And what's happening in this, in understanding your past, being clear about your purpose and your reason for being, where you, as a colonized individual, as a self-colonized individual, as somebody who was believed for their life that they had to leave themselves at the door, you are suddenly told, hang on, we want to know about your weaving of cloth. Bring that to the table. We would like to know about, I can tell you the story anyway. We would like to know about the weaving. We would love to know about how it is that you make your print. So all these different knowledges are brought into the table when these students are deciding that putake. The putake leads to the doing. We have reflected, we are being, we are connected, we are worthy, we are enough, we are valuable. So of course, our business projects, our enterprise projects, our design projects are going to reflect that. They're going to reflect our mana, they are going to reflect ourness. That ourness is not a singleness. It's the cross-pollination, it's the weaving, as TK said, it's the rangatiratanga, it's the growth of a new story, the co-creative story, which is the kotahitanga. And from that kotahitanga, the result that emerges, I'm going to take you to a few slides. That's the manakitanga, the whakapapa, the putake. What emerges is a remembering of our students, of us to kaitiaki, to us being guardians. Now, in this process, it's a long time process. In this process, we have children, we have rangatahi, who are not simply graduating with a university or a high school diploma. We have rangatahi who are proud. We have rangatahi who belong. We have rangatahi that know that what they have to say is valuable because they have co-created their education at high school for us to be able to go into the future and be the kaitiaki that we need to be, in whichever way we need to do it. From whether you're a doctor, whether you're a nurse, or whether you're a career that doesn't exist right now. It's okay, because from the kotahitanga, from the unity perspective, every being is worthy, every being is enough, every being is part of the whole. And this is the story of Indigenous thinking and indigeneity in action in the small island of Aotearoa, all the way down south. Now, this is not all easy. I've tried to summarize 5 years in the voices of the students. There were very many, and they had desperately tried to give you their own video of the whole second part of the Remembering is Kaitiaki. But as I got on the plane, about 45 hours ago, I got an urgent message saying, "Fire Kelsey, what do you want? Do you want the truth? We've given you the video as you've seen it, but it's not looking great. We didn't get the voices in. Can you just put these voices in as learnings? And we promise you we'll give you the video, but we just can't get there. We can't balance it out. We can't do it." Now that leads me to the first key learning. This process looked like a really small 15-minute presentation, actually contradicts totally the concept of linear time. It totally contradicts this concept. And as a result, I'm perfectly okay with the student-led initiative that didn't pan out in a video today. Did it change the learning? No. Will you get the video? Yeah. Probably a little bit later. Does it matter? No, because it still doesn't impact your learning. You still learn it. And they still have experienced it. So, as an educator, I have to be okay with that. Now, the second learning is the learning of relationship. Now, as an educator in multicultural environments for 23 years and having lived with artisanal communities and worked with them across Southeast Asia, Africa, and now the Pacific, I can tell you for a fact that if you lie, you're kicked out. "Hello, nice to see you." It's not going to work. It's not going to cut it, because that authentic relationship would be the teacher saying, "I'm sorry, you had a deadline and I need the video. You better figure it out. You got 45 hours by the time I land and present it to get me this stuff. It's only 3 minutes." But instead, I had to understand their positionality. They work. I teach children who are in the lowest socioeconomic area of Aotearoa. And most of them are putting food on their table. Does it really matter that I don't have a video? No. But the relationship is based on such deep trust that it's not going to affect their long-term learning. It's not going to affect their way of being, that they're able to share it. And we don't do this. We don't do this because we don't have the time. And I'm going to skip further down to the curriculum design and to the yardstick. Sadly, this is our current position for many educators with the best interests. Yes, we can design a beautiful curriculum. Yes, our curriculum is experimental, it's explorative, it's wayfinding, it's project-driven, it's co-created with the learner, oftentimes meaning we know nothing about it. We're going to have to figure it out. When we get businesses that are not talking about profit as money, when we get businesses that are talking about profit as in the bird song, you've got to be willing to listen to that. Now, maybe us here are, but the majority of us are not quite there yet. That's a bit sad. So we're going to need curriculum design that requires a deep amount of unlearning from us, relearning from us, and the willingness and the courage for us to let go of our power. And this is a part that I'm not sure that Western education is ready to do yet. Are we really ready? And are we really willing to say that my student is as knowledgeable as I am, a PhD, and I don't know how many other little things I have at the end of my name? Are we really willing to say that? Are we really willing to give up that control? And that leads me to the last thing. And the last thing is that our current one-size-fits-all education outdated. It has to change. And this is directly from the voice. This looks this way because I literally took the ideas that they gave to me and flicked it in a slide at the end. This is coming from them. They want an education that looks more like commons, that has got no hierarchy of country and definitely no hierarchy of wisdom. On that note, I would like to conclude by inviting you. I'm going to invite you, for us, to be brave enough to go back into our indigenous thinkings, into our old ways of being, into our current positionalities, and remember, and let's bring our remembrance to the table. Let's bring our whole selves to the vulnerable, in the vulnerable spaces that we can, even if we can't be. Let's bring that. And I'm going to let TK give you the Maori version of this, but in English it basically is that there's but one eye for needle.
Yeah, kia ora tātou. He whakatau ki tēnei a proverb, ko tahi te koha o te ngira e kūngai te miro mā, te miro pango, te miro whiro. Nā kingi tāwhia tēnei.
Kia ora, TK. Now, the reason this whakatauki is really important, and the reason I will end with this, is because King Tawhaingo was the king of the dominant Māori tribes back in the time before the treaty, back in the time when the beautiful Māori invited the Pākehā, their colonizers, to the table to learn, to co-create. That is not, and that was not, ever the intention of the Pākehā colonizer and the Crown, aka New Zealand. But here we are today, many hundreds of years later, with the same whakatauki. Why? Because we all have a wisdom and we all have a knowing. And if we want to shift the narrative, all of our knowings are worthy and need to be heard together. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora.
So thank you very much, Karishma and Tukaya. Thank you. And we are going on with the third collaborative presentation. No, this is not collaborative. This is just a one-person presentation. Rishab Manoka, I think he is online.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes, but not to see you.
1 second, you will appear. Can you switch on?
So we see you very small.
Sorry about that.
Okay, now we can see you very well, I think. I can see myself.
Yes.
So, there you are. So, Life After Life is the title of this presentation, and Dr. Risha Manoka is an alumnus of the prestigious Central St. Martin's College in London and an associate professor of Pearl Academy, Jaipur, India. He has over 25 years experience in fashion education. He has worked with some of the most important institutions in the UK and India, and has a long experience in providing art education to adults with learning disabilities. In 2015, Rishab relaunched this hand-painted ceramic brand called Vanitas Collection. And this presentation invites us to imagine a clothing culture in which we could all learn to repair, to trade, and to build clothing libraries so that others might use them for free. So, and he's showing us 3 case studies focusing on the role of upcycling in the context of Indian manufacturers. So, welcome, and the floor is yours. Bishop.
Thank you so much, and hello to everybody. This particular study is very important to me. It's titled Life After Life, and I have a video to share with everyone, which covers the paper and also 3 case studies, as the host just mentioned. These 3 case studies have something in common between all of them, which is life after life. The common thread runs across the 3 case studies. One is very philosophical. The other pertains to the work of my postgraduate students at Pearl Academy. And the third one looks at a startup that is built on the idea of circularity. So through the video, you will all see how circularity is something that is not new to India, and it has been there during the medieval time, also through the work of my students, how they have created curative textiles, they've handcrafted them, and then the startup, which is the last case study. Could I please request the conference team to play my video? Yes. Thank you.
Someone's not playing. 1 second.
Could you just press the play button? I think at the bottom should work. Yes, that's the one.
Can you maybe share your screen?
Oh, all right. Just give me 1 minute, please.
Okay.
Sorry about this.
No, we are sorry about this. We cannot hear you.
Are you able to see my screen now? Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes, yes, now it is.
Oh, all right. I'm just going to add the subtitles, because there are quite a few Hindi words in it that maybe will not be. Okay.
Today, I'm going to present my paper titled Life After Life. This paper has been a revelation for me too, as it has allowed me to learn about sacred and unorthodox practices carried out by Indian godmen in the remotest parts of the country. I hope my research will provide you with compelling and shocking evidence that will lend you an insight into understanding a departure from orthodox Hinduism by sadhus who have arisen above the tangible to conquer death itself. The Ganges emerges from the Himalayan foothills near the ancient city of Haridwar, one of the 4 sites where the Kumbh Mela takes place, where it flows from the Gangotri glacier. Hindus revere this massive river, which is also the world's 3rd largest. The holy river is said to wash away your sins and lead you to moksha or salvation according to legend. Mela means fair in Sanskrit, whereas Kumbh signifies a pitcher. A 12-day and 12-night struggle between the gods and the demons is said to have ended with the nectar of immortality being poured out of a pitcher and landing on the 4 distinct Indian locations: Allahabad, Nasik, Ujjain, and Haridwar. These are the areas where the Mela takes place in various forms. If you believe in Hindu mythology, Allahabad's Sangam is a sacred spot, and some believe that a single dip in its waters can wash away all of one's past sins. There are a variety of factors that determine how many fortunate days are included in the festival's total duration. A record-breaking 100 million people attended the Allahabad festival in 2019, which ran for 55 days and included 6 major bathing days. A big fair with religious overtones is what the Mela is all about. Unlike other religious holidays, a visitor's willingness to participate is unrestricted, and there are no time limits on how long they can stay. It's a place where individuals of all faith may come together regardless of their differences. Curiosity seekers from India and outside mix with hardened spiritual gurus known as Aghoris. These people who have given up everything in life, including clothing, live in the ashes of cremation grounds, use human skulls and bone cups as ornaments. They adorn themselves with rudraksh beads and are rumored to consume human flesh from cremation grounds, which they collect from cremation pits. The incense from the adjacent temples fills the air in Haridwar. Sometimes the odor can be detected in the river itself. The atmosphere, on the other hand, shifts dramatically once you enter an Aghori's camp. Campers' nostrils are assaulted by the aroma of charred human flesh and cremated remains. As part of the Aghori cult, Aghoris undergo a 40-year period of rigorous concentration and numerous rituals. They don't think of themselves as human and instead feel that sadhana or meditation has allowed them to reach another dimensional realm. All of their things, including family, wealth, and clothing, have been renounced as they pronounce themselves as the devotees of Lord Shiva. As a gesture of divine protection, they bathe in ash and smear it all over their bodies. A fundamental part of Hinduism is the belief that the ultimate goal of life is enlightenment and the fulfillment of human potential. Several people from diverse backgrounds gather at the Kumbh Mela to seek spirituality, authenticity, and a bigger purpose in accordance with the dharmic teachings. The Aghori way of life is a representation of living in harmony with nature, that we are all inherently divine beings having this human experience to live in a world more aligned to the values of sustainability, diversity, compassion, and higher consciousness, which is the foundation of oneness. As part of my research, the first case study investigates narrative textiles, samples created by postgraduate students of fashion design at Pearl Academy, India. This project allows students to use craft and textiles to explore life and death and appreciate the relationship between the two. The project also marks a continuity between the living and the diseased. The final outcome combines metaphorical handcrafted textiles to represent mourning and imagine alternative lifestyles in different settings of profound loss. India produces tons of flower waste every day, but now a company called Fool, headquartered in Kanpur, is giving a second life to these sacred flowers, collecting more than 12 tons of them from temples and transforming them into handmade incense sticks in the hope that this blossoming startup can make an impact on India's flower waste problem. It all starts in bustling wholesale markets like the one in Shivalya. Merchants pick up the flowers that they'll sell outside Hindu temples. Because these flowers are used in rituals, they are considered sacred and can't be thrown into the garbage. Every day, more than 1,000 tons of flowers end up in the Ganges River. But many contain toxic chemicals like arsenic, lead, cadmium, as well as pesticides. Ankit founded Fool, which is the Hindi word for flower. The company's employees pick up the waste from temples throughout Kanpur, making around 19 stops a day. Then they transport the flowers to Fool's facility, where they weigh and separate them from thread, fabric, and plastic. Workers save only the flower petals for the incense sticks and sort them by color. They keep the buds and stems to create compost that is sold as a separate product. Then they lay the flower petals out to dry on large tarps. Once they are dry, they grind them into a powder that is mixed by hand with water and essential oils until it reaches a clay-like texture. Then it's time to roll. Workers dip their fingers into the flour powder while rolling to create an even thickness. Then they let the sticks dry before dipping them again in essential oils. They are laid out to dry one more time, then packaged up. Workers here can produce around 400 incense sticks every hour. Ankit calls this transformation flower cycling, and he says his product is cleaner than others. Ankit also wants to find out other ways of recycling flowers. He started a research lab to develop new products. They are testing vegan leather and biodegradable alternative to styrofoam, but those aren't ready for sale. Still, floral waste makes up only about 16% of pollution that runs into the Ganges. Harmful chemicals open sewer drainage, and garbage run directly into the river. That's a growing danger for more than 400 million people that rely on the river for drinking water. Modern society has provided us with immense wealth and technological progress, but at the expense of our humanity, health, mental well-being, spirituality, and the fragile ecological balance of our planet. Nature, inner tranquility, sustainability, and the holy must be at the forefront of human existence to create alternative paradigms linked with dharma. People from indigenous cultures, religions, always turn to their ancestors for wisdom and guidance in all things. Could their model for civilization provide a path forward for a world out of balance? Since the world is becoming more and more aware of yoga and other forms of meditation, I believe it is possible.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Thank you.
So thank you very much for this beautiful film. And we go on with next presentation, which is also the last one for this collaborative session. And the presentation is called Decolonial Design Education in Culturally Diverse Ecosystems. Laia Chiravuru is here with us, and other contributors of this presentation are Akshita Gangwal. She is online, yes? We will check it now. And other contributors are Zakia Adil Khatri. I just say a few words about Laia and about Akshita. Hello, Akshita, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Laia Chiravuru is a design researcher with a background as a fashion designer, specializing in creating social design strategies to support the fashion and lifestyle industry through research for sustainable impact. She's invested in examining the nuances of cultural sustainability within the textile craft ecosystem of South Asia, and she's also an alumnus of the Bauhaus Dessau Foundation here in Germany. And Ashkita Gangwal is a craft textile designer focused on the field of the revival and research through multiple Indian craft projects. She has worked she has worked a lot promoting the tribal Kasota weave of Gujarat, batik prints, and natural dyeing. After graduating from the Indian Institute of Crafts and Design, Jaipur, she founded Akar, is a brand supporting local artisans for design and capacity building. Thank you very much to both of us, and you can start with your presentation. Maybe you want to tell something about Zakia, or should I do it? Okay, so the third contributors of this paper is Zakia Adil Khatri. She could not be here today, and she's an artisan designer and a fourth generation Bandhani artisan from Bui, Gujarat, India. She has given lectures in Peru, in Wisconsin, and she has studied at Kala Rashka Vidyalaya, and she's taking forward the crafts heritage by co-founding a brand focused on encouraging women artisans to create bandhani textile. The brand is called Bairaj. Bairaj. Okay, so it is not really easy to pronounce all these names. Sorry if I don't do it properly, but so it's my failure. Okay, thank you very much, and you can start.
Hello everyone, thank you Antonella for the introduction. So my name is Laya, and yeah, I'm a design researcher with background as a fashion designer, and I am and for the context of today's talk, I would like to highlight that I graduated from the National Institute of Fashion Technology in Delhi, in India, in 2015. And I'm joined today by Akshita Gangwal, and Zakia couldn't be here today, but yeah, she has graduated from Somaya Kala Vidya in Kutch, Gujarat, and it's also a design institution in India, a fashion institution. And Akshita would probably briefly introduce herself and the institution she represents.
Hi, so my name is Akshata Gangwal. I am graduate from IICD, Indian Institute of Crafts and Design, which is based out of Jaipur, Rajasthan in India.
Yeah.
And it's craft-based institute.
Yeah, so together we have developed this collaborative presentation today by representing 3 different institutions in India, and that is what we would like to highlight, the diversity of institutions that are engaged in fashion education today in India. So our talk is titled Decolonial Design Education in Culturally Diverse Ecosystems, and it is focused on the context of fashion education in India and anchored around highlighting the diversity of creative industry in India and redistributing the access, agency, and privilege of design education through institutional diversity. So in other words, expanding the domain of fashion education for robust design learning.
So we would like to begin by illustrating 2 systems of education that were historically seen in the country. The first one is Gurukul system, which you can see on the left side of the screen, and versus colonial education system. So a long time ago, education system in India was being followed system of a Gurukul, a Sanskrit term that translates to the home of Guru or a teacher. Young people or Shishya stayed over at the Guru's home, lived as equals, and carried out daily activities along with the Guru while gaining knowledge. So the structure of the teaching was particularly defined by skill-based training, where the guru recognizes specific characteristics and the capacity of each student and trained them to nurture their individual strength and overcome their weaknesses. So basically, the shadowing of the guru was rooted in the social cultural wisdom of learning and navigating all aspects of living and inculcating a disciplined way of appreciating resources. In contrast to the colonial system of education, which was brought and been which was bought a standardized approach to teaching, where all student has to pass a same course to achieve a standard degree that qualifies their jack of many trade learning. Even with the choice of field, there was a little attention given to them individually, or barely the attention was being given to them on their individual interests, skills, and capabilities.
Yeah, so that was largely 2 models of learning that we saw historically in India. And then moving on to like particularly focused on design education and understanding how design was taught or evolved in India. Early on, like before colonialism, we had art, craft, and design practices that have been very interlinked and seamlessly interlinked as practices, and culturally this had been passed down as generational knowledge to the next generation of artisans. So the way artisan communities used to practice art and crafts was that it was linked in apprenticeship, where the younger generation would absorb the knowledge from the artisan family, and it was tied to the geographies, and it was local and limited, the kind of art and craft that was being practiced in India. But while the domestic market was all very local, there was also this export market which was the domain of the master craftsmen. So there was also like a domestic market and also export market that already existed. And mainly the way design was being practiced before was it was passed down as oral knowledge to the communities, and it was inherited by the artisans' children through apprenticeship, like how it's illustrated in the picture here. And in the newly independent India, there was a need to establish a modern design identity to like Indian design. So to like understanding the socio-economic needs of the society, the first design school was established in 1961, and then the first fashion institution emerged in 1986 to integrate industrial design and fashion with the textile economy of the country. So soon, with formalized design training in English for the new category of fashion designer, in the industry. So this discipline created a pathway for only a selected demographic of young, educated enthusiasts to learn design thinking at par with international standards, while also teaching them about Indian crafts and textiles. So, in other words, a designer was trained to understand the resources around them, organize them, and shape them to cater to the needs, wants, and desires of the domestic as well as the international market. So,
So,
what happened was that in this way, this understanding developed a kind of hierarchy where the textile economy was soon seen as like the textile economy and the craft workers were seen as material and human resources respectively.
So now let's look into the objective of fashion education itself. So, like some of the emergence of basically fashion design in the creative industry. Historically, since the fashion was the indulgence of financially higher class, with the trickle down effect, fashion design graduate in the country early realized the need to establish differentiate brand identity with a never seen before kind of design innovation. Following abstract concepts, designers were tackling the primary question of how to create an elevated modern design appeal in a traditional market, which one cannot find it in a traditional market. This trend-setting vision led to series of reinventions of techniques, materials, patterns, motif, garment, ensembles, and so on, which caused a brain drain and de-skilling at the artisan level, where their creativity is broken down into its components that are being mixed, matched, and reassembled to create a whole new hybrid identity. Some craft clusters were valued and spotlighted, but while others struggled to keep up with the shifting brands trends.
Yeah, so this format of fashion education then was not serving to the vast diversity of creativity that existed in India, and because India and Indian design is defined by its rich socio-cultural diversity, and to show that we picked this Google Doodle that was from 15th of August this year, which was Indian Independence Day, and it represents textiles from each state of India, and it's only a small selection of the vast diversity of creativity that exists in the country. So this format of formal education was not kind of encompassing this creativity that we have in the country. So a systemic change in this case starts by acknowledging that creativity is not the domain of the modern fashion designer alone. So the creative economy in India comprises a vast diversity of thinkers, makers, creative communities, innovators, organizers, and entrepreneurs who have always worked in close cooperation. Particularly in fashion, um, India is a strong production country which engages a lot of minds and hands across the country, across the geographies in this end-to-end value chain. So for culturally sustaining such a vastly diverse economy, there was a systemic need to look into alternative curricula and structures of learning, which meant broadening the field of formal education to include this vast diversity of artistic practitioners and creative groups that we have in the country.
So, what do you suggest, like a brand new system or a cultural throwback? So, destandardizing design education, acknowledging the diverse creative capacities in the country called for destandardizing design education and bringing institutional diversity to serve this goal. Decolonial thinking does not translate overhauling existing structure to go back to the old ways, but objectively recognizing the potential of the old and new systems and bridging them together synergistically. It need not to be encompassed in only one institute. That is what destandardization would mean. So it has to be an overall system where all the institutes come at a with a building a bridge between the modern education system and the like the Gurukulam system.
So, as examples of what such a de-standardized system of education would mean, and which format of diverse approaches coexist in this field, we highlight three institutions here. So, the first is National Institute of Fashion Technology, NIFT, and the second Indian Institute of Craft and Design, IICD, and the third Somaya Kalavidya, SKV. Each has its own special education model, which serves a particular kind of audience, which is why we wanted to highlight these three different institutions. NIFT, with its various design courses, places a great focus on providing international exposure to students who are seeking to become fashion entrepreneurs or seeking diverse role in the fashion industry that are either craft inspired or even non-craft. It also works in close coordination with the Textile Ministry of India to integrate design projects, to integrate the textile economy with domestic and international fashion markets. Whereas IICD specifically leverages the craft capacity of the country and embeds craft making and thinking into every course, at the center of every design course. So design graduates from IICD, they learn to analyze the market and the existing crafts around them, and utilize these existing crafts in their closest authentic forms to design products and services with a unique craft element at the core. And SKV is special in a way because to stimulate innovation at the grassroots, SKV was founded with a vision to upskill artisans, to equip them with modern design knowledge and to step into the dynamic sphere of design thinking and expand their roles. So unlike NIFT and IICD, the primary criterion for student applicant in SKV is not that they have to have formal training in English, but they should be coming from an artisanal background and should be belonging to an artisanal family. And they should be practicing craft. So such institutional diversity, so as artisan students in SKV already have that technical knowledge and a great depth of creative and technical skills. So the institution's focus is to train them in practical design thinking and how to innovate and design a brand identity for them, how to understand the market and how to continue their craft heritage mainly. So this form of institutional diversity also emphasizes the importance of different actors in a creative ecosystem and how they coexist in that ecosystem. So de-standardizing education allows room for many actors actors in the creative industry to reach the same footing of seeking knowledge access and market agency. And also such creative specializations such as the artisan designer are they become more visible through such diverse institutions. And one more example of decolonial thinking that we'd like to highlight here is that every year SKV invites its graduates, its alumni for a trend forecasting event where they share the knowledge that they have about the market and introduce the design graduates to emerging concepts. So this format of knowledge sharing is it really underlines the ethos of Creative Commons as a part of fashion education itself.
So, like when we see all the institutes, so one of the very crucial aspects is the hierarchical relationship. So, in colonial education, the hierarchical relationship between the professional expert and the student in the classroom is of a student and an expert. The knowledge gained in this approach was being applied in the industry later. While working with the various actors in the value chain, especially the artisans. This further led to a tense dynamic between the student with design qualification and the artisan with the practical design skills. When young European students with theoretical design knowledge barely have any practical experience, visits a ruler craft cluster to work, initially there is a noticeable friction between them. friction between the artisan and the student. Because like artisan used to like artisan follow a standard set of methods and standard set of method and processes from generation, which is being continued from generation, and they're reluctant to explore new concepts and adapt readily. For the designers to create and show new possibilities, and for the artisan to bring their expertise to shape them creatively, it first required developing a relationship between them and a mutual trust by learning each other techniques and thought processes. There was a need to intricate their spaces, skills, and objectives. So when I say it, a culturally evolved decolonial education can be seen in IICD and SKV in learning by doing format of education exchange, wherein artisans are invited to the education institutions to teach crafts, and students would visit craft clusters to learn how the crafts has been traditionally done or practiced. So the bilateral engagement between the artisan and the student is again rooted to a Gurukul education system of collaborative immersive learning, where the artisan takes an active role as a teacher instead of a worker. It contributes to a critical relationship between a design student and a craft person, thereby increasing a sense of mutual respect and responsibility while cooperating within the ecosystem. In a post colonial nation with a vast linguistic diversity, this reciprocates also bridges an underlying vocabulary gap in the fashion industry when the artisan and the student learn from each other's language, design language.
So, in conclusion, to wrap this up, we'd like to highlight on the industrial impact that we have seen in the past few decades. So, in the past few decades, there has been visible growth in the local economy and craft-based garment industry in the country. And part of the credit goes to this restructuring of design and fashion education, because we have progressed from these definitive categories of a design professor, a fashion designer, a craft worker, and a supplier. And because today we have this rich fashion landscape where there are a lot of roles, there is a lot happening, starting from these international luxury fashion houses, multinational fashion brands, artisan turned entrepreneurs, craft businesses which are adapted both to local bazaars and e-commerce platforms. Then rural craft cooperatives with shareholding for artisans, design education from both English and non-English backgrounds, craft tourism, cultural knowledge facilitators, design researchers, and so many roles. It's buzzing with a lot of possibilities, the whole craft fashion economy in India. So we see that fashion education is no longer confined to the classroom or being taught and evaluated by definitive design exercises, but it's becoming more and more robust, and it's going out of the classroom and becoming more collaborative and culturally inclusive. Yeah, thank you so much.
So, we had now the last presentation, and we have the possibilities. We have, I think, 20 minutes to discuss together, to ask questions. I want to thank all contributors for being here, for sharing with us these ideas about realigning fashion education through alternative methods to changing paradigms and focusing on degrowth, on cultural heritage, and on many others concepts which came through these papers, through this presentation. So I would like maybe you to come here so that the audience can ask you questions. And yes, we have micros. Where are all the micros? Ha. So I think you can start with questions. Yes, please.
I have a question for Karishma. You showed this one very beautiful green slide with a text where you invited us to read. And then you passed on to the next slide so quickly that when I followed your invitation and I thought like, oh, now I can take a deep breath and I can actually read, the slide was gone.
Pardon me.
So my question is it possible that we can have a second look at that slide and that I can read the text? It was one of Tyron's texts, I believe. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
I'm really trying to be conscious of linear time, and as you can see, I'm not very good at linear time.
Right. So you gave that invitation
Sorry,
to get out of the near time, and then whoop.
take that moment.
Thank you.
So this is the putaki that I wanted to bring your attention to, and it's from my lovely friend and colleague, Tyson. So I'll repeat that. Sorry, louder. Okay. So the intention here was for you to breathe in this putake, which is where we are today. But really for you to breathe out your wisdom and the complexity of each of your ways of being, each of your positions, and each of your indigeneities. It's a little provocation for you to remember you. Tēnā koutou, katoa.
So thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
You can just say who you are, just shortly. So
yeah.
just present yourself. So.
I'm Elisa Palomino. I'm an independent researcher. And yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for their beautiful presentations. And particularly, I really appreciate Laya and Rishabh last presentations. And I love the idea about the Gurukul system of learning. I've never heard about it, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, having the guru, even though the word guru has kind of negative meanings, but just the connection with nature and the connection with spirituality, which I think is very much lost in society right now, and is very much connected with the extraction of materials as well. But our connection with the divinity, which I think is lost in societies, and many students as well have pretty much lose it. So I would love to thank you for the enlightenment and that respect, and because if that connection is lost, everything else is lost. So thank you for that beautiful point. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much. What we had on our mind to highlight, why we highlighted that Gurukul system of education was that the important thing today, in today's context, is understanding the limited resources around you when you are learning how to engage with an environment. So this Gurukul system of education was rooted in that learning of social values and also cultural values, and also embedded in understanding the limits of the nature and respecting what comes from the nature. In contrast with colonial education system, what we have seen is it was too standardized, and you have to just progress by standards, every standard 1, standard 2. So there is a disconnection with the culture or society you are living in, and the knowledge that you gather, how to integrate that with the society. So then we wanted to highlight that slowly these two practices are slowly brought together. It's not like one versus the other, but how to integrate both of them, how to integrate the potential of both of these systems, and then tackle the question of sustainability also in that process. Yeah.
Thank you.
So maybe I also have a question for you. You talked about the vocabulary gap in fashion education, which I think it is a very interesting point, because it is something we experience also in our context here in Berlin, and in many contexts when we are dealing with people sharing different cultures and different heritages. And can you tell us something more about this, how you manage it so in a practical way, the vocabulary gap?
Yeah, I think this mainly connects to, I think also my colleague Akshita could also elaborate on her own experiences with this vocabulary gap. What we have seen, like with regard to this friction between the artisan and the designer, there is a lot of vocabulary gap in terms of like things like trends or mood boards, or like, oh, these are color schemes, or we use these terms which are taught to us in formal design education, and we think this is some new way of design thinking, whereas the creative communities also have their own like way of creative thinking and their own terminology, and when we try to work with them, there is a visible gap, and that gap translates into a hierarchical relationship, and then it's not easy for us to work together collaboratively with artisans. Initially there is a friction. So when there are systems of learning where artisans are also coming to a fashion institution teaching, taking on this active role as a teacher instead of a craft worker, and then when students go to the craft clusters and live in that environment where the craft actually is practiced, and understand what is the local terminology in which this craft is being taught, or even how did it evolve. So there is a vocabulary exchange that happens. It's not just language exchange, but the specific terminology, which is also an interesting way of collaborative learning. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. Akshita, if you'd like to add something to it, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, like as you mentioned, that there is like a huge the technical words which come into like creates problem. If I can give an example, like a very basic word, warp and weft. So in Hindi or in like a regional language, we call it tana bana. So tana is a warp and bana is weft. So like as we were being taught how to weave by ourselves, so we have to show weavers as well ki what we are trying to say. So sometimes we have to use that sign language or to like, or even show them ki what we are talking about. So we use a lot of like as I was working with weavers directly, so I used to weave parallelly to them so that they will understand what I was saying, what I'm trying to say, and then they replicate accordingly. And slowly, even like as a designer, we have to be open about it to learn new words and new terminologies. So even they will feel more likely that we are engaging with them, and they will even try to learn our vocabulary. So yeah, that's my learning to it as well.
Thank you. So, is there any other question?
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for your beautiful presentations. It was really wonderful and touching, and giving so much hope as well. for all of us. I particularly have I mean, it's not really a question, it's a comment on the research and the work of Marie-Geneviève Cyr, especially on the work of your student Yatunde, which I found fascinating, and yeah, on Black history and revealing the history of the student, facing the erasure of Black history and so on. And where could we find more about this work? What are the next steps of the students also, like maybe publishing or sharing the work?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Yetunde is a current senior student right now, so she's not graduated, but she's very interesting because like she's an artist, she's a writer, she's like, you know, a designer, like she's in the fashion system, she's connected, she's all over because she creates these workshops, she connects with friends, you know. But her research that I was talking about, the difficulty is she has so much, right? She just received, you know, like she built this huge archive, you know, over the past year in a way. And for her, we've been like cataloging and what that looks like as well. Like, is it a website? And now she actually found a place in Florida where they actually kept some of her original work of her grandma that she had no idea. So it seems like there are works like all over the place. But for her is to connect with an institution or a museum or something like that, that she will pass this on as well because it's very important to preserve. So beyond obviously a student project, because this is not like a student project, you know, and that's why I think we were talking about it's all these like extra things as well that connect students with communities. But yeah, that's what she's doing right now. She's trying to figure out a way to catalog it. You know, she wanted it to be on a website, you know, because this idea of accessibility as well, like, you know, is very important as well, sharing as well. But she's also, that's going to be a process. That's going to be a process because there's a lot, like the house as well in New Jersey is still there, you know, and she goes once in a while and she's been like visiting like friends of her, you know, family members that she had no idea. So it took a while to kind of just reach out to people and reconnect and have conversation, right? So that's an ongoing project. But I hope she does something bigger, but I think it's going to look like an online kind of catalog celebration at the beginning, you know, between going to an institution, yeah. Anyway,
I just wanted to say, you know, you asked where's it going to go? And one of the things that I noticed was an interconnected thread of this methodology, this cross-pollination of methodologies is the process. You know, these start like little projects from school, but they become huge things that become, they change, they pivotal moments, the node, you know, Donella Meadows, she talks about the different nodes in systems thinking that can shift them. Yeah, that's what they become. So, you know, I saw this interconnection up on the slide whenever these students works, and these things don't just give them a grade, it literally changes their perspective. And I saw this beautiful interconnection, including with the movie with Dr. Rashad's. The power of this style of education, if we are brave enough to embrace it, is limitless. It's transformative in the moment. And we don't know where the transformation will lead us because we all got to get there so we can sort of unravel it. And I really loved that synergy that I came across. I just kind of wanted to bring that together because it's so beautiful to actually watch that it's happening in all these pockets all over the place. So. Thank you.
Another thing as well that I saw as well around is I've been thinking quite a lot because I'm in an incredibly privileged place in New York City at Parsons that is expensive, that is a privileged university, and it's international. I'm not from there, the teachers are not from there, the students are mainly not from there as well. So it's such an interesting kind of ecosystem in itself, and I'm like listening to all the presentation and I'm like, yeah, what is like like New York, like culture, you know what I mean? And even like thinking about industries. Of course, we have the garment district, but like we started as well last year a project working with a farm in Long Island and all these things. But it's so hard to connect because there's barely, you know, industry is so foreign for our students. You know what I mean? So how do we connect as much as possible with our ecosystem? It's like an ongoing work that we've been working on, you know, but it's very challenging, you know, as well. Being in New York, it's very different.
I think that's a similar thing in Aotearoa because we don't have particularly related to fashion. In fact, related to all industry apart from farming, we don't have the industry. And so that disconnects. So for us, that disconnects to the colonial, but it doesn't disconnect to the indigenous thinking. So it's kind of an opportunity to go, well, let's ignore that or like kind of keep it here because we don't know it, but let's unravel. So oftentimes, you know, the collaborative nature of what's happening in Asia or what's happening in other countries gets brought into the country and then pushes them. So in that process of the putaki, process of that unraveling, that's what that process is for. But it is a very long, time-consuming process, and I'm very curious to hear what you thought about it because I feel that it's the same. How do you challenge and deal with it?
I think what really struck to me listening to this Putaki process of learning is it also kind of is a little parallel to the purpose that you were talking about, purpose of life. It kind of resonated with the Ikigai way of life. And also, it's kind of parallel to what we see like happening in India in design education today, because particularly with SKV, the design institution for crafts workers, like we saw today. So it mainly acknowledges that you already have skills, you already come with some knowledge, you already have, like each student has their own craft practice, and it does not start from scratch like, okay, unlearn everything, now we start from the first chapter, but saying, okay, how to integrate all of these people and then how to train them in modern design knowledge such as branding or marketing or business management and these kind of upskilling, but also acknowledging that they already have the knowledge to knowledge and design thinking already. So what resonated with me from your topic is that all beings are important, all of our learnings are important, every individual is important to think as a whole. So it kind of has some parallels with what we see in India right now.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? We also have the other contributors online. Maybe you have questions for them. No? Otherwise, I have a last question, if you allow, and then we can go for the lunch. We talked about institutionalizing new paradigms, and you showed us different examples about this. What is your feeling about implementing this, making this? Is this a hard thing to do? It is a hard process, or your experience are, I guess they are all different, but how do you relate to this long process of institutionalizing different paradigms, deconstructing times in education and hierarchies and so on? Maybe you can have a conclusion word for this question. Thank you.
Okay, so it is an incredible challenge because it doesn't, to deinstitutionalize or to break down and to rebuild requires for all of us to be at the table. And in the case of education, that goes from the micro level of the student and their family to the macro level of the government and the politics of the country. 5 years ago, when I started my research with secondary schools after deciding it had to go down the ladder, it couldn't stay in tertiary, my biggest obstacle or my biggest supporter, given the fact that it was Jacinda Ardern, was that it was Jacinda Ardern pro-well-being, and that meant the government was pro-it. So the challenge for this is all stakeholders at the table. Sadly, the biggest obstacle for this is that ultimate big wig, because it's politics. And so that is my sort of the biggest and hardest thing to break, is you can get the governance on board, but then because we have monetized education, because we have monetized tertiary education, in New Zealand it is about 2% of our economy. And I think in other parts of the world, in the States, and for Parsons is an institution that relies on that. So that's when it becomes really difficult, because that means that it's linked to the government, and that means that the governance is looking at GDP. So that then are all the ties that make it complicated. So you're going to have to get on board political parties, political activists, and thinkers who are literally ready and willing to do the hard yards of protesting to bring it down. It's very radical. Exactly, that's the point. Just keep continuing.
Yeah, yes, this is very, 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 very challenging. Like, I feel my work every day is to go to war. That's my job at Parson, is to fight. I'm just going to say it every single day for everything, everything, everything. For us, we're a huge machine, Parson. We're a big brand. Our program, the program I lead, is the money making for the entire university. We have like a little bit over 800 students just in the program I lead. So I lead with, 800 or 900 now. I don't know, who knows what enrollment is at the moment. So every single time we want to change something, it's extremely challenging, and we have to go through accreditation and all of it. But recently, there's always like loopholes, right, everywhere. So thinking about accreditation right now in my team, we're looking as an example at like how can we create just like one credit course for mentoring and volunteering for students. You know what I mean? It's like just a small thing, right? But like how you can play around, you know? You're still fighting, but there are ways. I feel there are always a little loophole, right? And there are always like new ways, like I talk about as well, about putting education somewhere else and like try to, anyway, students-led workshop and all these things, as well, that, you can just not tell anyone that you're doing within your program, because it's for the good for the students, and it connects them, and community building is like center to everything we do, especially after COVID, return to campus, and students from all around the world coming back as well to campus in New York City. That was really, really important to connect together as well. So we have to create all these opportunities for them to reconnect as well, but outside the university and life and their purpose and all of it as well, But yeah, I think you can be creative and with loopholes.
Yeah. I'm with you. You've got to find the loopholes. Yeah.
I think I'll just shortly wrap up. I think both of you, from educators' point of view, I think you made really good points. What I could add is that, so today we spoke about 3 different institutions in India. So from a student's perspective, we also saw from the time I graduated in 2015 until now, this institute has also brought in a lot of changes, and seeing how culture is slowly changing, and how to be more inclusive, or like how to connect the students with the resources and the textile economy around. So there has been a lot of that integration process already that has happened so far. What I could add is that today we have a lot of research also that is being done on the craft economy of India that is more accessible by everyone. So I think for students, it's also probably more crucial to understand what is their role after they graduate from this institution, to be aware of that whole research while they are within the institution to have that integrated sort of like learning. So maybe that is something that will take a little longer. But already like a lot of new things are happening. I think Akshita could also talk a little more about the change that has happened in the fashion learning, fashion landscape in India in the last few years.
Can you hear us? Yes.
You're not audible.
Pardon, I didn't got the last line. Like what was it?
We were discussing how can we implement whatever we discussed today, how can we see it implemented, or what it would take to see it implemented in the curriculum or policy or whichever way.
Honestly, in India, it is like right now like it's more like like it's a wave where a lot of artisans and designers are collaborating, and like the young institutes like NIFT, IICD, SKV, and Pole Jaipur, then a lot of more institutes are inviting artisans and curating their sessions so that the even students and designers develop a sense of responsibility towards them, and even artisans feel comfortable to work with them, because there's like a lot of there's a big gap between like there's a cultural gap as well. So I feel taking governance on board is a really good idea, where they can make policies for them, but it will take a while. Like it will take quite a time where they can come on board and make it a compulsion for all the institute to have such kind of courses in between. And we are like IICT is trying a lot and collaborating with international national institute as well to do it, and brands like Neela Jaipur and like Anokhi Museum. So these like they have demonstrations where they invite people who are not from design background or craft background, but a normal person who is from maybe engineering, but they have some interest towards craft and art handicrafts. So we invite artisans for workshops, and anyone can come and learn. So even that is helping to bridge the gap in between. I think that answers the thing.
Thank you. You want to add something?
I think one thing that we do, so I also teach a course in economics. So, and I think there I'm really stuck with, the GDP. So what I do is I frame the entire course as a history lesson. I frame the entire course as a history lesson. All assessments are purely for the purpose of the history lesson, even though the assessments have been localized and indigenized in the application of how we solve the problems. So you answer for what the requirements are, because we haven't been able to change those requirements yet, but you also then answer for a post-growth economy. And that's the new way of thinking. And so that's how I've been able to bridge the gap in an O2, so basically a pre-university economics class and a level 8 economics class in business, in university. History and then new ways of being.
Thank you very much. So, any other question? No, I think no. I would like to thank you all for your contribution, also in the internet, in the World Wide Web. And thank you very much for being here, and enjoy the conference because it goes on in the afternoon and tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.